Welcome to this edition of MDM Live. Thank you for joining us today, April 24th, 2020. My name's Tom Gale. I'm the CEO of Modern Distribution Management. MDM is a market research and media company that provides market intelligence, trend analysis, and market analytics tools focused on wholesale distribution in industrial markets globally. Our program today is sponsored by VersaPay. VersaPay ARC automates the entire invoice to cash process. It handles all of the low value AR and collections tasks so that your team can focus their time on accommodating the customers that are struggling to pay their payments right now. Visit versapay.com for more information. And with that, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Mike Marks of Indian River Consulting Group. Welcome, Mike.
Hello,
and also John Gunderson, our VP of Analytics at MDM and Sales. And John's going to be our first guest today. So welcome to you both. We do have a great program today, 2 hours. And two things I just wanted to bring up. That we do have Q&A here. So if at any time you have questions for our guests today, please use the Q&A function. Mike and I will be monitoring that throughout the program, and we'll be happy to share your questions as we can with each of the guests that we have today. Also, we are really interested in your input for what we cover here in the following weeks. We've been getting a lot of traction with this and interest, and we'd like to figure out ways to make it better and include you in the conversation. So if you know of a panelist who would be good for us to talk with, if there are formats for this or what better ways that we can do this, please let us know. And with that, John, why don't you, well, actually before John, you kick it off, Mike, let's just spend a couple of minutes and what's new with you this week?
The most depressing thing that I've seen, Tom, is I read an article in my Apple News, and apparently the average person that is now working from home is spending an extra 3 hours a day working. So the division between work and personal has gotten much smaller, and we're all working harder even though we're sitting at home. So that didn't feel real good. But you know, we're continuing to have all the conversations. I've got a couple of things I can maybe run through that have been surprises for distributors. That there is one of the things that's come out really clear is that there's a really big difference between cleaning and disinfecting. And I'm talking about this in terms of facilities. We had a big distribution center that had to close week before last. And they had to keep it closed, which obviously cost the distributor a lot of money. They had to get a third party in to clean it. And one of the deals is that there's cleaning, that's getting rid of dirt, and then there's disinfecting, which is getting rid of disease. And there's a big difference. There is a program out, if you go to the ISSA website, which is the International Sanitary Supply Association. These are the facility supply distributors. And there's a online program that you can take, and somebody in your company can get certified to do what they're calling confidence cleaning. When this is over, how do people know that they're safe to go back in? They're even going to have like a gold star for like restaurants and stuff. But it's a couple hours. I got to pass a test, but it's a way to actually know. Italy, the government got stopped at the last minute. They were taking disinfectant, trying to disinfect their asphalt roads, which would have been a horrible waste. Couple other things that are maybe more interesting. I had a distributor had their salespeople write handwritten letters to their warehouse guys, thanking them for being on the front lines, and the surprise at the warehouse workers that anybody would actually talk to them. It got an extremely strong response. The other thing is that we now are having problems with facilities closing and opening back up. A distributor executive's got to start to make distinctions between people that don't want to come back to work because they're making a bunch of money on unemployment, and those that are actually afraid to come back to work, because one needs to be dealt with much differently than the other, and these things just can't keep going on. We had another warehouse. They set up. This is an example of sort of zone picking on steroids. They actually used white tape or the police evidence tape to mark out areas on the floor. So if I own a zone as a warehouse worker, people are dropping putaways and my carts to pull orders. They are actually having contactless work between the person working the zone and the person staging the order. I'm starting to see a lot of creativity here, and it's probably going to be worthwhile for us to maybe go through and pull out all the good ideas. Another example is one distributor is buying lunch for the warehouse guys. And again, it was just to kind of compliment, hey, you guys are in the front line. But he said it was actually to keep them from going out to get other food, maybe get infected. So we had another distributor that for all the drivers, they put together what they call a care package, and it's got their essential service letter in case they get stopped by the police, gloves, sanitizers, wipes, and everything else. And then I saw an electrical distributor, just like we're starting to see in grocery stores now, they put up the plexiglass between the person and the customer. I'm starting to see that on some electrical counters, which I thought was really impressive. So these things keep coming in, and I think it's just really neat if we can just find a place to actually kind of share all of them, and just so everybody can see what's going on. There's a lot of creativity here, and everybody's still doom and gloom, but I'm seeing some cool stuff.
Yeah. And I just wanted to throw up and share that for a second, because we're going to, in a follow-up email to this program, we'll have a link to this slide with bullet points that you put together, Mike, and it's got a lot of great ideas in addition to the ones that you covered as well. So thanks for that.
Anytime. Well, everybody, people hate to have problems, and when you come up with a solution, it doesn't cost anything to share it. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be more problems, Tom. I can't wait for John to start talking about the joy and love between manufacturers and distributors through all of this.
So this week, John, in our MDM update newsletter, wrote two great blogs, a two-parter, and really it was around the impacts of what this whole transition we're in right now is going to do to manufacturer-distributor relationships. And John presented some really nice metrics in terms of things to really use to evaluate what those relationships look like and what they're going to look like in the future. And one day from the perspective of distributors, and the second day from manufacturers. So, John, go ahead. Let's go ahead and dive into that.
Yeah. By the way, John, one of the things that I really enjoyed out of that, in terms of what you wrote, was this idea of the distributors initiating a reset in terms of the plan, and just kind of reaching out instead of waiting to have somebody ask them. So make sure you please dive into that, because some of that was new to me.
Yeah. Well, really, I was trying to think of, my career, spending a lot of time working for some very large distributors and negotiating deals with manufacturers. So I kind of started with how most annual planning goes. And, Mike knows this, and Tom, I know you know this, and most of the time your annual planning, you kind of start in October with the meetings, and often they roll into first quarter, right? Because there's so many and budgets aren't set, and you really follow a 3-step plan where you say, okay, what were sales last year? What are we going to grow to this year together? And you kind of cover the sales issues. Then you get into the major accounts you share together, and you talk about your plans for growing there. Usually, Mike, as you know, that's a lot of happy talk where you talk about all these great calls you're going to make together, but you really never really get around to them. So that's where you kind of talk joint calls and how you're going to grow at the account level. And then you really get down to business where it's the payment terms, right? If you're a cash driven distributor who takes the 2% discount when they pay within 10 days, you cover that. You cover return goods authorizations. You cover freight allowed. What's the minimum order for freight allowed? And then you get to the most important thing, Mike, which, as we know, is the rebate. Yeah. So, which is, hey, you get to a certain level and you get a percentage back to $1, but then your growth rebates are on if you grow the business. So thinking about how that all went, it's very outside account manager driven. That's really out the window this year with everything that's happened, because outside sales has in some cases been completely disrupted or at least greatly curtailed for both the distributor and then also the manufacturers calling on the distributors, right? There's great disruption. It also includes the manufacturer reps and the end customers. So that whole face-to-face thing has been broken up. And then, Mike, when you couple that with the fact of, in my 20+ year career, I've never seen articles like 3M is getting criticized by the president for not managing their supply chain. And DuPont was in the news this last week, unfortunately, with Grainger on a government contract that made national news, where the reporters were saying that there was too much margin made in the transaction. So that pressure to those gold-plated brands, I mean, in our industry, 3M and DuPont are two of the biggest, most gold-plated brands in B2B distribution. They're also big brands in B2C. So that whole dynamic is going to cause everybody to look at channel realignment and who I'm partnering with, and I've got to cut a new deal. What's your input on that?
Well, at least look at it. I mean, one of the frustrations I had on both of those deals is that, and I guess this is part of the frustration we're having where everybody talks about fake news and the rest of it. Mm-hmm. Knowing the other side of both of those stories, yep. The public never gets a balanced view. Everybody's looking for the drama, and what it seems the media is trying to find and expose bad actors. And if they can tell a story, it doesn't matter whether it's factually true or not. But I mean, from my point of view, if you want to talk about integrity, I mean, both DuPont and 3M, I know, Tom, I know we're not supposed to be talking specific. Both those guys are wearing white hats, and they're good guys, and they've done really great things. And nobody gives them any time to tell the other side of the story. But the pressure that a manufacturer feels, they're getting beat up from all kinds of stuff. And I think you're right. I think you're going to see this, what this does. And you made a reference to this in your blog. There have been a lot of problems between manufacturers and distributors that everybody learns to live with, right? You can't pick your relative sometimes, and everybody's got a weird family member. But what this pandemic's done is it's bringing all this to the surface, and I think a lot of these sleeping dogs are going to get woke up.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm just going to add in, Mike, though, too, in terms of you talked about 3M and DuPont, but and this may not be popular with some of the people on the call, but I'm going to just step up here for Grainger as well, because there's too many variables at play in this to just come and slam them for trying to take advantage of this. Can I? Well, let's see. I have non-disclosures.
Well, but you're right. I mean, the thing is, this was a government contract, and it works very much like a GPO in healthcare, and there's very carve-outs and things. They weren't supposed to be delivering that kind of volume. That was a price that was set in the contract for an emergency deal that nobody thought they were ever going to do in a million years. They they incurred costs just to have the reserve available. This is about, sorry, I could get in a lot of trouble, but there's these guys aren't wearing black hats. Everybody's just trying to get it done.
Yeah, and that's my point. Is really what CNBC reported last weekend. It was a data-free reporting job and analysis, and that's really what my main point here is because we did dive into the government contracts, and we did some additional research with the primary players in not just this, but in a lot of other areas in terms of government contracts, and that there's just too many variables to immediately slam any of the players. Exactly. So
correct. And I think,
John,
go ahead,
your
Mike.
Your point, John, is that it's still going to create a lot of change. It's going to be different for different people, but I mean, it's accelerating.
Yeah, and I think we're all in agreement that I think all three parties were doing the right things, but for the most part, the public doesn't understand the supply chain. So the average person's going to read it and go, "What the heck is going on?" Right? When and so that you've got brand stewards in Minneapolis for 3M, brand stewards who are sitting there going, "I got to protect the brand," right? And so because of that, I don't think it's a stretch to say that 3M and DuPont are going to look at their franchise agreements and their authorization agreements and make some alterations.
Well, and we're talking about them, but everybody else is, I mean, how many hundreds of manufacturers have to go through the same thing?
Correct. Yeah. And I think the other big thing too, Mike, is that push and pull of over time. I got a big order that's going from a manufacturer to an end customer direct, that I ship it from my location to the end customer and the distributor doesn't touch it. It's a direct order. In the past, there's been much more I'll run that through the distributor and let them make X margin as, what I would call a bonus for helping me on stock and flow business. And I think one of the things that is absolutely going to happen out of this, if somebody's, let's just use a hypothetical manufacturer, any customer that's over $1 million a year, they look at taking some of that direct. I think as a manufacturer, you start going, okay, logistically, 80% of my orders are going direct to this customer. Only a few are going through distribution. Maybe this year I say anybody over 500,000, I consider taking direct. So I think at the bigger customer level, there's going to be much more of I'm not running it through distribution conversation. It's just a natural. It happens every time in a contraction, but I think this time it's going to accelerate for all the reasons we talked. What's your feedback, Mike?
Well, I think it's absolutely right. But if you think about sort of modern channel design, it's very unusual to have adequate market access with just one channel to market. You need multiple. And with the digital and everything else, manufacturers should have some involvement with some direct sales, because if nothing else, it engages them with big users so they can get involved and bring the user into the product development process for innovation. It's really critical for a manufacturer. But there should be, the best practice now is that, what are the criteria? Here's 8 criteria. If any 3 of these are present, it's a direct customer. And you need to have a set of rules of engagement going forward so everybody knows what the ground rules are. But this idea that I own everything in this patch, that worked really well back when the patches were really isolated, and 90% of the American population lived and died within 50 miles of where they were born. But that's not true anymore.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a big key from a distribution perspective, because I wrote one from a manufacturer perspective and one from a distributor perspective. So to kind of hone in on it from a distributor perspective, if you follow our premise and things have to be different, go work and set up virtual meetings with your top manufacturing partners and redo that meeting we talked about at the beginning of this call. And just a high level, I will say this, we get the opportunity, Tom and I, to work with distributors all over the country and all over the world as part of MDM with our analytics platform. The distributor who comes in with data on the customer, what sales projections are, how they're doing digitally, the more data you have, the better chance you have of negotiating a better deal, a better reset deal with your manufacturer partners.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
John. Well, no,
but I would say he and she who come in with data are going to win this fight. What's your input on that?
Well, as you know, we work with a lot of manufacturers, and a manufacturer is entitled, in my view, that if I'm a manufacturer, I'm dealing with the distributor in a local market, they should know more about that market than I do.
Yep.
And so many times that the distributors have no data at all. All they have, they're all good storytellers. Their sales guys are getting everything that's out there except the low margin business, pass the joint when you're done. But when the manufacturer sees a distributor that can talk to them about market share and what's going on and competitive changes, the manufacturer loves them, and they pay a lot of attention because it's so hard to get that data.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, we shared some things. I think this is the time where you got to come in as a distributor, and you have to have the research of saying, let's say I'm meeting with 3M. Okay. We'll just use that as a hypothetical. You've got to have an understanding of the type of business by customer that you're doing with 3M, and you got to Pareto it down. So the biggest customer I share with 3M is this. Here's how much they did last year, how much they did Q1 2019. Here's how much you did Q1 2020. The best I can, I'm going to project they're going to do this. And then I've got to have commentary on that customer beyond my account manager, Jimmy, and and Shelley, you know, their best friend's the buyer. You know, you got to have something more than that. And I think this is where you got to come in and say, they're using our vendor managed inventory. They're using this. They're accessing their invoices online. You have to show the barriers of exit to you by
Right.
customer. You got to be careful how you do that, because you may choose not to be, you know, you can't share everything potentially in a conversation like that. But I think you got to go in a more selling approach with the manufacturer at times now and say, here's why I'm going to be the partner you're going to bet with next year and for the rest of this year.
Well,
And go ahead.
Sorry. Well, you get me excited. One of the other things that goes with that when you're talking about that forecast is giving your supplier insight on what's happening with them with plant closures. What is our served available market, or their total available market, their projected spend? Is the product available market shrinking because of the industry they're in? I mean,
Yep.
It's not about being precise or turning into an accountant, but it's about giving your manufacturer partners confidence that you understand that market better than they do, and you're allocating your resources to help them build share.
Yep. Yep. And then, you know, the flip coin of that, Mike, is because you do a lot of work on the manufacturer side. The flip side of that coin is the manufacturer's got to look at who's their strategic partner in a market, who are their approved partners, and who's authorized. And they've got to go through a process where they look at there's two choices, right? Authorize a whole bunch more people.
Yep.
Or you prune and you make bigger bets with your strategic partners. Now, every market's different in the United States. Every channel's different. But, you know, we've been in this business a long time. You can bet every manufacturer right now is in the war room going, okay, I'm in Orlando. What are we going to do in Orlando? You know?
Well, and so talk a little bit about some of the things you mentioned in your blog about cash flow and the pressure and how some of that's going to flip. Because I think that's going to probably be the triggering event for some of these big changes we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree. It's rare, even in the liquidity times, to worry about getting paid. And you're going to have to bet as a manufacturer on people who can pay you. And, oh, by the way, because we got a supply side problem and we've got a demand side problem right now, that's why you got to disclose your customer position, because if you're tied to a customer that can't pay the distributor who then can't pay you, that you as a manufacturer got to know that, and you will evaluate that distributor differently if they're top customers in that jam. So,
well, yeah,
go ahead.
Well, you mentioned about the planning the rebate, which is kind of typically one of the last steps in the annual process.
Yep.
There's somebody we're working with right now that basically is blowing up the rebates because they're in one of those industries that's in a big decline. You know, PPE is going like this, everything else is different angles. But what they're doing is they've changed it, and it was really interesting. That came up because of the call. I think it was last week, and I forget, one of our panelists brought it up. And what they've done is they're in the process now of changing it for an early payment discount, because they deal with a lot of really small distributors, and so they're worried about the balance sheet stuff. So since the guys were going to make the rebate anyway, they had built it into the cost model. They're providing some very sizable deals in terms of paying fast. Yep.
And Mike, I would just say, just to give you an example, a real world one, I was working at a very large distributor, I'll leave unnamed, that when we went through a downturn, I think it was 9/11, and you can go research who it is by looking at my profile if you wish. But we were a very cash-driven organization where we were, anytime we can get the prepayment discount, we'd take it. So somebody gave us 2% net 10, we'd pay within 10 days to take the 2%. So we were in a position, and during the downturn, we just started doing things like going through, showing them all the data, but then also saying, we're going to take our rebate right now, right? Like, we're not going to wait till the end of the year. We're earning it. We're just going to start taking it. We hope that you agree with us, right? Now, you have to have discussions there, but if you're in a good cash position, you can cut some really big deals right now.
Well, we have one big distributor that already did that, and they said,
Yep.
we're going to start taking our rebates pro rata, and all of our payment terms are now net 90 until we
Yep.
advise otherwise. And it just, they were very, I mean, I'm giving the sort of the brutal end of it. They were also very clear that as soon as we see the headroom, we're eager to go back to normal terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I worked for an organization that did just that, right? But if you have good discussions and good partnerships, manufacturers really want to know they're going to be able to get the support from you to move product and also get paid.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know we talked about on one of these earlier calls, and I know we're getting a little bit up on time, but right now, I think if you can structure deals that are stock-based versus direct, that stock business is sort of how they build their factory flow. The more you can commit to stock business is more, it helps them even out that curve. And I would make stocking discussions a big part of what you're going to discuss at the SKU level with your manufacturer partners. Because if I'm a manufacturer, I'm going to be interested in talking to you about that.
Well, and I mean, what you just talked about is something everybody in this audience should be thinking about when you're doing these planning. Separating your project or CapEx from your OpEx and MRO is very, very different. And most of the time people have gotten excited about projects, but this is a whole different deal now. So looking at the responses in terms of manufacturer distributor working relationship are going to be different for both of those. I think you're right on point.
Yeah. And just quickly, we've got about 3 minutes, John, of this segment.
Sure.
Just encouraging people to ask questions if they have any. There's a chat function in either the bottom of the window or top of the window. Just click on that. You can type in a question. Mike and I will be sure to handle it.
And because I'm the consultant, I'm qualified to just make things up. So we'll always give an answer.
You can count on that.
Yeah. I just think it's really important for you to come in right now with as much data as you can, because it's a somewhat data-free environment right now with all the, you know, it used to be you'd go in a meeting and you'd say, okay, well, last year we did this, and, you know, MDM says the market's going to go 3%. We're going to take share. We're going to grow 5%. And everybody be like, oh yeah, no problem. Right. Let's cut a deal on 5% growth and let's move on. That type of data-free negotiation is not applicable for 2020. Just not.
Well, that's why so many of the big companies are pulling guidance. You know, the public company I don't have any base as a public company that I can form any responsible expectation for my shareholders, so I'm not going to give you one.
Yep. Yeah. So I think it's really important that data. If I'm a manufacturer, we do have a question here, guys.
I'll read it out. Vendor consolidation and SKU rationalization is a win-win-win for all parties. Do you think distributors who do this better will survive and make more money and become strategic with their manufacturers? What's your take, John?
Yeah, I think you've got to have discussions of consolidation of spend between manufacturers as a distributor. As a manufacturer, you got to force that issue. I think, what do you think, Mike? If you become more important to fewer people, do you win more often?
Well, yeah, you do. But here's the deal. You need to stock what you sell instead of sell what you stock. Or sorry, I did that backwards. Sell what you stock instead of stock what you sell. Because salespeople would go out and they sell one brand even though you stock something different. And when we did all this stuff we did with stress testing back when we put this stuff out in the public domain about a month ago, one of the key things if you're trying to deal with your margin is supplier consolidation. So if I buy from 4 wiring device manufacturers as an electrical guy, I need to go with one because that allows me to take care of the guy. And it's a difference between dating and getting engaged or getting married. And that whole thing you talked about in your blog about strategic partners and non-strategic, I think that's going to be really, really important. Yep.
Hey, Mike, I know we're getting up against it, but there's another great question. Why don't we?
Oh, from Skip. Yeah. Well, I think what's going to happen is the question was, do you believe select distribution is making a comeback? And my true opinion is no. I think the old thing of if you look at saturation, select, and single, you know, which are the 3 kind of deals, I think we're going to see multi-channel, but I think this idea of just anybody that can fog a mirror can be a distributor. I think select distribution is going to come back from that point of view, but manufacturers are still going to be selling in internet platforms and the rest of it, but we'll have a clear set of rules of engagement.
Yep. One last one that I wanted to read, because the next one I think you guys can pick up later. It just says, if suppliers are exploring a direct go-to-market model, won't this have the opposite effect of distributors sharing data? Yes, especially from the old mindset. When I was in distribution, if you went direct, we were going to go to war, right? And it was a really nasty conversation at times, very forthright. But I do think when business gets tight, those discussions become less nasty. And I do think thinking you've got the power yourself as a distributor to play hardball all the time, I think you're going to have to share some more data, and you're going to have to be more partner focused. Don't you think, Mike?
Well, the National Electronic Distributor Association, when it still existed, put together a point of sale bill of rights and about who owned the data. And by the way, they own this. I haven't looked in a long time, but the Power Transmission Distributor Association, PTDA, had done a lot of work in this area, and they had put things out in the public domain about the obligation. So if I'm going to share data, that manufacturer can't use that data to my detriment without incurring some legal liability. And if the manufacturer is willing to sign that, I'm willing to share data. If he's not willing to sign it, I'm not going to give him squat. So it's if you're married, your spouse has access to your credit cards and your bank account. Yep. Sorry, well, at least mine does.
I just think you're going to have to be more open in discussions on your data sharing. And I think you got to figure out what that means for you. But I think the adversarial relationship that you've had at times with manufacturers, you have to get to more partnership in this current time frame.
Yeah. Tom, can I do one quick one on that Amazon question?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we gotta move on.
Okay. Well, but here's the deal.
So Mike, just to, let me repeat the question, because Amazon's not focusing on brand rationalization and strategic, but adding everything in the world and becoming #1 in industrial distribution. We had a blog earlier this week.
Right, it was a great blog. I loved it. I got 5 hostile emails on that.
Yeah, we got some comments too. So go ahead. I just wanted to repeat.
Well, but here's the thing: is different. The manufacturer makes the hot dog. The distributor provides the bun and the condiments, and all the customer wants is lunch. They don't care about all this other stuff. And a lot of times customers need all those services, but there are times if we're not actually selling, if they're just buying something they buy all the time and they want a stripped down version for less price, why should a customer be forced to pay a higher price for services that they don't need? They need to do this situationally. And that's at the heart of where all this stuff is getting played out. Now, some manufacturers have figured it out. They're selling online on Amazon. Their distributors are very happy. I mean, this isn't the place to have that discussion, but when somebody wants to buy a strip down, why shouldn't they be able to do it?
This isn't the place to have the discussion, but this is absolutely the time to have the discussion. I mean,
yes, it is.
So I would just end with that point. And
thanks, gents.
John, thanks so much. It was a great conversation. And
see you guys next week.
You bet.
Take care. John, we got a third of the way through what I thought we were going to talk about.
Hey, that gives us more content.
Exactly. Boy, Tom, you have the power of life and death when you unclick somebody.
Yeah, you better watch it. All right. Let me introduce our next panelist here. And we're being joined. I'm sorry. Bear with me one moment.
I like that we're starting to get some questions.
There were some great questions, and
I'm convinced Kim's going to get slammed with questions once people see what she's going to be talking about.
Yeah, and I'll just start out my Kim, you should be coming up live here. If you just want to check your video feed.
By the way, while you're getting that worked up, one of the comments here, we got this is from one of our Epicor folks, and one of their Profit 21 customers, Duncan Parnell, if you guys Google it, they're actually producing sneeze guards and those plexiglass protection shields for a lot of Southeast companies. So this thing of putting it up on the counter, people can still slide products underneath, but it actually keeps the transmission level down in the R factor.
Yeah. Kim, there you are. Welcome.
Yeah, you gave me life.
Yeah.
This is great.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, nice to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. And sorry we're running a little late. We get excited occasionally on this program. So,
Good.
you are the COO of SBI Health and Safety. And thanks so much for joining us. And let me just allow you to tell us a little bit more about SPI, please.
Yeah, so SPI, we are a distributor and a health and safety company. So we have the 360 degree approach. So we do consulting, training, inspections, fire services, and we sell equipment in health and safety. So we are across Canada, 20 branches and 400 employees, and in around the different provinces, and we mostly target industries in the mining, manufacturing, construction, and energy.
Great.
I bet you've been having a very interesting month.
Yes, very interesting. Yes, different than we've ever had before in our business, for sure.
Yeah. So how are you and your team doing right now?
We're doing good. We've been thrown a curveball, like Mike said, in the last month. And the most important thing right now is that all our employees are safe and healthy. And we have no cases right now. And we are trying to keep everyone safe, the workers, of our customers, and our staff.
So I'm sure you've been slammed in certain fronts, but what are you hearing from customers?
Well, customers, of course, depending on the province where their head office is, have different feedback. Some of our provinces have been closed, so a lot of companies closed, like Quebec and Ontario, for a certain while. Others stayed open, so a lot of our customers are for sure asking for more supplies, all the COVID supplies, so masks, gloves, face shields, or Tyvek, and other smaller, sometimes customer have just closed down for a period of 3 or 4 weeks. So we've seen customers, we had a different type of mix before today. We had a certain percentage of larger customers, certain percentage of medium customers, and certain percentage of small customers. Now in the past month, our sales are mostly driven towards larger customers. And a lot of our customers are bulking up, trying to get inventory in for 3 months. And that's what, we've started to promote to our customers also. So I've also gotten feedback. We've gotten feedback through our salespeople that our strategy was to service our customers, to be loyal to them like they have been loyal to us, and to manage our inventory towards our existing customers. So a lot of our customers have been really appreciative of that strategy.
Yeah, and I imagine that you've both, in terms of new customers coming to you looking for supplies, as well as new suppliers looking to you as well. Has that been a challenge to try to manage both the supply and demand end of that?
For sure. It has been a challenge for us to get supplies. Fortunately, our operations group was pretty quick to also buy more stock of the products that would be needed for the pandemic. So we were good at that, but even though we were good at that, we are getting multiple demands of companies around the world to buy masks, to buy gloves. And unfortunately, we cannot service everyone that's calling us right now. So we've decided to go first and foremost with our existing customers and the people on the front line, so the healthcare system and those types of customers.
Yeah.
I assume that it uses up all the available supply, doesn't it?
It does. Definitely.
So do you find that your supplier, because you're in the crosshairs of all this, Kim? I mean, you're right in the middle.
Yes.
And I know there's a simple matter of there's more demand than there's supply. There just nobody has enough. Are people being pretty straight with you? I mean, are they telling you I have it and then they don't deliver, or are they saying I do have it and they do deliver? How much noise is in the system right now?
Well, right now, what I can say is that you were talking with John just a few minutes ago to really focus on partnership. And the good thing is that we have extremely good partners that we've been dealing for a long time with. So trusted relationships. And we have meetings every week with our strategic partners, and they're telling us really how it is. You talked about 3M also just a few minutes ago, and you know, we have meetings and they're telling us, you know, exactly what we can get, and if we can't get, you know, the stuff right away this week, they tell us also. So all of our partners are pretty much honest, even though they know it won't make us happy. At least we can then be honest and transparent with our customers also.
So how are your salespeople dealing with all of this? Are they working from home? Are they still visiting customers, or is it a mixed bag?
They're working from home. So through Zoom and Skype and all that technology, it's different work. Now with a lot of their time is dedicated to calling our customers and asking them where they're at, where is their forecast, what's their capacity right now, so that we have better insight on what's coming and how we will be navigating this storm.
So is their morale holding up? Are they freaked out? I mean, and the reason I'm asking is there's kind of a range. There's some salespeople that just, they took them a day or two, they're adjusted to the new deal and they're cranking, and others are like having emotional breakdowns, you know?
Yeah, we have both. So, and also from an inside sales point of view, everyone was, as of the 24th of March, sent to work from home. And so some had difficulty. The most social butterflies had most difficulty adjusting. And others were like, I know they will find it difficult to go back to the old ways.
Right.
So I think what's coming up is really a blended approach. I think some Zoom and Skype will be going forward, and we still need the in-touch person at one point to build the relationship. Zoom is really good to get business going, you know, and talk about the real stuff. But there's also that, you know, coffee machine or corridor talking that, you know, gets people excited and builds a relationship.
Go ahead, Tom.
You're on a roll. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I just had a senior moment. I mean, I started to think, how do you keep up with all this stuff in terms of salespeople? But one question, this is kind of tactical, Kim. A lot of companies that we've talked to have had a huge problem trying to get inside sales to work from home because they couldn't get access to the system. Were there any lessons that you learned when you made this switch back in March to send everybody home? Advice that people that you wish you would have known at the time?
A lot of lessons. So we are in different transition in terms of technical IT programs and projects. And when we sent everyone home, we had to put everyone on a VPN, which we didn't have. So we had to be really, really quick to put this together. You know, having to go forward. I think maybe our VPN supplier or we will be like your internet provider. We'll go maybe for the higher.
Right, more bandwidth.
Yes, yes. But it's fascinating how people can learn quickly in a time of crisis. Here in our main office in Montreal, people used to have, you know, admin people help them with Zoom and Skype and all that. And now in a minute of time, you know, everyone is able to create the link Zoom, you know, unmute themselves. There's no issues anymore. So that was a couple of days, but we had Zoom for almost a year, and we had like maybe 20% of the staff that was comfortable with it. And now I would say almost everyone is comfortable with it. So.
Wow. And that's less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days. It's a great time for creating and learning and people, you know, it's like fighting a war. So everyone gets together and we are all aligned, and things are going much faster that way. You know, we're like, okay, we're going to battle this and let's get together, and people are working very closely together, even though they're far apart.
Right. Well, but it's like you say, we're adaptable, and they picked it up really fast. And so before I let Tom edge in with the question, even though it's his show, now that people, your guys are getting used to it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to get any ideas or comments from them about what they think about when this is passed, that they want to still keep working from? I mean, have you heard any stories? I mean, what are people talking about?
Oh, yes, we've heard different aspects. We just started, what was interesting, last week I went on a forum where all the executives were there, and there was a talk about, you know, bringing people to work back right away, so that, you know, if you're away from work for 2, 3 months, 4 months, anxiety of going back to work is building. Oh. So that maybe it's better to slowly have people coming back, maybe once a week, twice a week, just to get the anxiety down. And I remember this from my mat leave, gone for several months, and when you come back, you're like, what's changed? And a lot has changed at our offices, because now we have hand washing stations, we have, you know, delimitation, maximum of people in the conference room, things like that. So we've asked people to come back if they felt, you know, okay about it. And if they didn't have any restriction, kids, you know, not going to school, and a lot of people were excited. Some people said, oh, I thought I couldn't come back to work. Oh, okay. Wow. So, you know, I had to stay home. And for the people that were already in the office, because we have a distribution center and we have multiple people that have to come into work, just seeing one new person coming back, people were excited. Like they felt the energy, the positivity of, you know, things are picking up.
Wow, yeah. I never even thought about the anxiety going the other way. I'm so frustrated working at home. I'm actually looking forward to talking to a TSA person going through airport security, which I never thought I'd say.
Kim, when we talked earlier this week, you shared with me the dashboard, and I wanted to get to that because I think it was really, there's some insightful things in there just to run through. So I'm going to share my screen here, and maybe you can walk us through a little bit in terms of some of the key things that you look at when you use this with your team. Can you see it? Can you see it now?
Yeah, I see it. So,
Tom, you're going to make this available to everybody afterwards, right?
With Kim's permission.
Well, she took out the secret stuff with the actual numbers.
That's too bad. It's the fun stuff, right? So early on, we put together a committee, a continuity committee, with multiple people of different departments to really enroll everyone, engage everyone on what do we have to do to make sure that our people are safe and our company is safe. So what do we have to follow? And so we put this dashboard together that you can see, where you see different indicators, different KPIs. And we're always improving it week to week. So we're looking at this dashboard every week. And, for sure, we're following sales, we're following gross margin, but other stuff also, like you see top 20 and 90 customers. So what were the sales the week before, and what are the sales now? How's it going? Is it improving from year to year, from week to week? So, and so we can follow our customers, also the capacity that we see just next to it. So our top 20 customers, as you can see, even though we don't see the numbers, you see the rectangular. So the capacity is much higher than the top 90s that we start to go in smaller customers. Also, we wanted to see the trend in terms of our customer per size. So as I mentioned, we're serving more of the larger customers. Often our larger customers, the margins are different. So we're following that. We also put things that were more in line with us going forward. Our web sales, new customers that are joining in instead of going to our branches, because we put a lot of emphasis on taking our customers to be, instead of going physically to our branches, but really calling us or going on our website, chatting with us, or placing their orders. So looking at the sessions, the web sales transaction. Also, as I mentioned, you see on the far left, we have our different business units. So the branches versus the technical side, the consulting. So we wanted to see how our business was changing, because COVID has been affecting our business units different ways. Our fire services, for example, are all the technicians that go into mine site or companies and do inspections of fire extinguishers or installation of fire suppression. But for a while, companies didn't want to see us. So that's been affecting us quite a bit. On the other side, we've been, growing our equipment, in terms of percentage. So, and then you see, if you go on the right side, you can see our employee status, our vendors, which one are in risk of rupture, which
Kim,
one.
can I get you to talk a bit because that to me was one of the more interesting things, because we're all dealing with uncertainty, and events happen and your view may change. If you could kind of walk through that, and frankly, part of my interest in terms of clients we're working with, I'm thinking I might want to share that with them. So please make me look smart.
You're already smart. So let's the supplier part of it, Mike.
Pardon me?
The supplier part of it, the top 10 supplier,
Yeah, no, the top 10 suppliers at risk of rupture.
None of them are ruptured yet. Red is when we have, a certain amount of weeks available of inventory. Then we go to the yellow, and the green is like there's never been a crisis. So comparing ourselves to other distributors, I would say, I think everyone is looking out for the risk of rupture, and certain items are more difficult to obtain than others. But that's definitely something we've been following quite, every day. And another thing that is impacting us, or that we have to be careful with, is that we have our private label. And most of our private label is done overseas. So when we started to hear about what was going on in China, we started calling our supplier from China and seeing if they were closed and they were not producing, and we could have rupture of stock. So that's how we started, buying more. So the good thing is that we found out that, our suppliers are really creative too. And at least 10 of our suppliers that were, doing boots, manufacturing respirators, are now manufacturing other supplies for COVID. So they've been approved and they have now KN95 mask. So that's really great for them. It's really great for us. It's really great for the population and the workers for sure.
So this comes out every week. Is there like a phone call or is there a meeting? I mean, what did we do with it?
So we have our executive meeting every Tuesday. So every person responsible for every little graph calls one of our person in finance that puts the dashboard together. We receive the dashboard on Monday afternoon, and Tuesday we look at it in terms of the executive committee to see if we are at risk in terms of our supplier, at risk with some of our customers, at risk with some of our employees. If we have to maybe call back a couple of people because, you know, we're getting more and more activity. So, yeah. That's
really cool. My compliments, because what you're doing here is absolutely clearly a best practice in an uncertain environment. The more information you put in front to see changes in patterns, the better off you are. And I love this thing.
Yeah. And if I can just jump in, I know we're going to go a little late on this segment, John. We'll get to you a couple minutes after the hour, but we've got a bunch of questions here. I'd like to jump in if we can.
Sure.
Just first, can you share what the operating system is for the dashboard? Is this customized or is this something that you're specifically using?
No, this is customized.
Okay, great, thanks. How does the allocation of pandemic supplies between manufacturer and distributors work? So I guess in terms of how you're managing some of the supply aspects and the triage that you're doing, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So our strategic partners, suppliers, have these items on allocation also. They're supplying us the usual supplies that they would be selling to us. And we are doing pretty much the same with our customers. These supplies are not available right now on our website to anyone that would want to buy. You can see them, but you can't purchase them if you're not an existing customer of ours right away on the website. So we're following pretty much the trend that our main suppliers are doing right now.
Great. I'm gonna. Are you done with this? I mean, the last piece down in the lower right corner there, that you also carved out a specific kind of the critical COVID-19 inventory items, the masks specifically, but then the other products. So you've just got an ongoing visibility into it's, specifically your most sort of what's most critical right now. So yeah, it's just this was fascinating to me in terms of the level of detail, and I thought it would be really helpful for the people on the call. So thanks for sharing that, Kim. So go ahead, Mike.
Well, if we've got another minute, Kim, it's a beautiful dashboard, and a lot of people haven't done dashboards, but a lot of times what happens, there's a fair amount of work on the front end to sort of design it. You got 10 people each putting a little piece in, but once it's designed, it's pretty easy. Is that?
Yeah, very, very true. So it was just the getting together. Our person in finance had to do one-on-one meetings with a person responsible for sales, the HR VP, and everyone, had their own data. They supplied the data. She did a draft. We approved it. And afterwards, like Friday at 4, they have to have sent all their information. And then it's easy. It's the first draft that's the hardest. And again, we're still, oh, finally this, it's not giving us that much insight. So let's put this instead. So we're already, and one thing that I was thinking about this morning, I said, okay, there's something missing and I want to, again, add something. I want to add, or I think it would be good because we're working on it, all the new opportunities business opportunities, not in sales, but in transformation, in being creative and changing our business and pivoting. We need to put on their KPI on that. You know, we're starting to do new things, and we're not keeping track or physical track of it. You know, so we need to have something in there that will track that opportunities list.
Yeah. So as a final question, Kim, actually, and this kind of ties in with what you just shared in terms of that additional piece of the dashboard, but do you see any long-term opportunities being created by this, either around web sales, new customers, as a result of having to get creative?
A lot. We had a small, in consulting, a small part was industrial hygiene. Well, it's been booming. We used to do fit testing for masks, and now it's like our primary activity in that department. We're doing hospitals, we're doing police departments. Everyone is calling us. We can't even, you know, respond to the demand. And, you know, I want to really, you know, congratulate or, you know, recognize our people that are going to the front, you know, that are doing these testing, because they're not doctors, they're not policemen. They didn't at the beginning sign up to put their life in danger. And we have so many great people that just lifted their hand and said, I want to have an impact, I want to help. And they're going out there day after day and being in the front lines, being in the hospitals, sometimes in weird areas where some, you know, there's a lot of COVID, there's a lot of deaths, and they're doing the job to protect our people, and that's terrific. So that's a new aspect, and all sorts of, for a long time we were saying we want to do virtual training, we want to do a blended training, because we were really convinced that hands-on training was the best way. Well, you know, things can go fast when you're in a crisis, because this is something that we've been thinking about for a year, 2 years, but now we're doing it. So
that's Rahm Emanuel's line: never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's it.
So by the way, what is the biggest good surprise you've had through all of this, where you were actually really pleased with something you saw, or anything really good happened to you so far?
A lot of good things, a lot of just seeing people come together as a group of SPI employees, but also as the connection between customers and suppliers. You know, our suppliers, we have to think of them as customers also, and really everyone working together. That's a great thing, and seeing also a country come together, a world come together, that's a great thing. But and multiple little things that, you know, people are doing and keeping connected. So that's one of the good things that happened.
Yeah.
Which I think we all hope stays with us when this COVID-19 thing is gone.
Amen. Yeah. Kim, thanks so much for spending the time with us and joining us. Your insights were really valuable, and you know, our best to you and Martin and your team going forward. It's a great company.
Thank you very much for having me, and great session, and I'll stay on.
Thanks.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Tom, do you think we'll ever be in a situation where we run out of stuff to talk about when the guest still has time in their schedule?
Not as long as you're on this program, Mike.
Fair call. Hey, John.
Hey guys, how are you?
Doing good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
John Wiborg is the president and CEO of Stellar Industrial Supply out of Tacoma, Washington. Been a long time friend and supporter of MDM. Thank you, John. And really interested in talking with you today. So I guess just as a quick start, could you please just give us a quick profile of what Stellar is all about?
Yeah, Stellar is a MRO safety and cutting tool supplier located in 11 different locations in Washington, Oregon, Montana, California, Arizona, and Florida. We're heavily oriented to, I know.
It's okay. That's an offline conversation, John.
Yeah, we'll talk more later. Actually, we're growing down there, even in this environment. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing. So that's a whole nother story. But we're heavily oriented to manufacturing, machine shop, and assembly operations. And within that, we're pretty oriented towards aerospace, which for a number of years looked like a really good idea. For the moment, maybe a little questionable, but we'll get back to it being a good idea. Stellar, we have a number of specialists, and our real go-to-market is to drive customer profit. And last year we had $17.5 million of customer-approved documented cost savings, and our team works every day to find ways to make customers more profit.
How much?
17.5 million.
That's real money.
Yeah, it was down from the year before. We didn't quite do the job, but we're at 8.6 million year to date. So we always are working on that. It's top of mind. That's what we do.
So first question, John, how are you and your team doing right now?
Well, our team's healthy and well, and I'm doing well. You know, I'm learning the beauties of Zoom cocktail parties and
Aren't we all?
like that. Yeah. You know, we have a lot of concerns about the duration, about our community's health in the various areas that we work in. We want to make sure staff's safe, but so far, people seem to be doing well. I'm really proud of our team and their good spirit. I heard Mike ask a question about morale. I think we've got really good morale. We got people that are, you know, they're expressing their gratitude about what we're doing, how we're doing it, whether it's customers or suppliers or staff. And that's awesome to see. I've always believed in having an attitude of gratitude. It makes things better in the world. And you don't always see it, but when things are down and people are finding their gratitude, I think that's really impressive and shows a lot of great character of our great partners and staff.
So, John, we talk a lot, and many people on this call know about your leadership roles over the years with both the Industrial Supply Association, but also with affiliated distributors. What they don't know so much is your involvement with the hospital system up there in your state. Could you just a brief outline on that?
Yeah, so I've been on a not-for-profit hospital system board for almost 20 years. I've been chairing it for 6 years. It's a 8-hospital with lots of outpatient services system in Washington. It's one of the largest systems in Washington. $3 billion in net revenues, about 20,000 staff. And so it's been really helpful for my business networks and my business to have some insights from the hospital. I early on got the UW Murray model of the forecasting state by state and for the United States. And I had the opportunity about a year ago to visit with those people on some other analytics they were doing and some data visualization. And so we had some pretty good insights about the nature, you know, as much as anybody can. Things change a little bit over time. But I'll just tell you that what's happened is that we've gone from flattening the curve so hospital systems can handle it to another mode. I'm not sure I'm clear about it, but what's going to happen is we got to get to where we're much more local and granular in how we're handling the shutdowns or the protocols. I think it's a permanent change that our customers are going to have to operate differently. We've got opportunities in that to do that. But what we're going to see over the next couple of years or until such time as effective treatments or a vaccine are available, it's just going to be whack-a-mole on a localized basis, shutting down a whole state. I mean, Buffalo, New York's reality is different than Manhattan's reality. So shutting down a whole state doesn't make any sense. You know, in our state, maybe in King County, there were issues. We're past peak. Yeah. But in Walla Walla, when there's 3 people in a 50,000 square mile radius, you know, might have caught. You don't really have to shut down all the taverns and the restaurants and the manufacturing in Walla Walla. So that's what I think we'll come to. I've been saying it for a month, and I agree. Out of adversity comes opportunity. We're all kind of in this crucible together, I think we've seen some heroic stories of across our society, but even with my staff, with our customers and some of our suppliers, and the things that they've done to be able to keep the plate spinning and be there to take care of folks, really impressive. And even the way our staff helps one another working from home. We had one staff member send a couple others flowers, just how you doing? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with Kings County being essentially one of the early canaries in the coal mine, as far as the whole cycle of what's happening in this country, it gave you a pretty unique position in terms of how you started to change some things in your company. How have you changed, and what's that look like across different locations?
Well, we were on the move early because our canary died in our coal mine. And so we started seeing needs for supply chain adjustments fairly early on. And it helped us. I mentioned earlier, we're growing in the Southeast, but the Southeast wasn't afflicted in the ways that we were in Washington as early. So we took some of the lessons we learned here in Washington and applied them elsewhere. It helped us get ahead of it. It didn't solve everything, but we've been everybody that can work from home is working from home. I'm proud of our technology team because we've been pretty progressive about technology. So it wasn't a problem getting people working from home. We're adjusting how our commercial team, our outside people work. And I think there's some real opportunities. That's a very high cost. There's a lot of necessary work that goes on there. But I think there's some real opportunities to get more efficient around that. And so we're looking at, we started about 4 weeks ago after we had the little birdies that were flying around our head from when Mike Tyson punched us in the face with COVID. When they started to go away, we started talking about, and I was challenging my team, what are the good things that can be permanent out of this? Some of the things we're doing are temporary. But we're trying to make a distinction between the changes we've made that are temporary and expedient and the changes that we've made that could be good permanent changes. And then the other question is, what can you do in this environment to accelerate transformation? And I found over the years when people are scared, myself included, I'm a lot more amenable to accepting change. And so that Rahm Emanuel quote is apt, because when people are amenable to accepting change, you can accelerate things. It could take 2 years. We're going to do them in 3 or 4 months. I find that exciting. We did that in 08 and 09, and we said we were going to do 3 years of change in 6 months. We did an awful lot of things. I think data is more important now than ever. Yeah. So I'm glad we have a robust data analytics engine. I think partnering is more important than ever. We've got tremendous partnerships with customers and suppliers. I heard that conversation earlier. I think this will give folks some thoughts about how to be more strategic and selective in the market instead of everybody's trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the changes that might be permanent going forward, have you gotten any interesting ideas come out of your organization so far that have bubbled up?
Well, yeah, we've got it. So we're having a running list. I said every idea is a good idea. Of what the kinds of things that we could do. And we're going to be we actually moved up our annual management offsite. It won't be an offsite, it'll be a series of Zoom meetings. And we're going to prioritize, and we're going to kind of categorize those things, prioritize them. And we're going to create 3 or 4 focused work streams out of that to move forward. I think we have some re-engineering we can do, whether it's re-layout of warehouses, re-engineering jobs. I've always felt like the CSR job's a complex function and it's not all of it's high value. So how do we re-engineer that job? How do we re-engineer our field team's work so it's more efficient? How do we accelerate automation? So we're making some very intentional and strategic investments in technologies to do things that we've had on our radar, but we decided to get moving. So things like automating accounts payable. I find that the technology providers are also a little more amenable right now. And so if you can invest in, important efficiency investments, that's the kinds of things we're thinking about.
Well, yeah, it's the leverage now, especially since many people are more amenable, as you make a one-time investment, enjoy the recurring benefits of productivity every month going forward.
Exactly right. And then we have things that we've already invested in. We use Salesforce CRM,
Okay.
and it's a big investment. And, you know, I'd say we're on a scale of 10 being the optimal return. We're, you know, so far at about a 5. So we're taking some power users in certain types of technologies like that, and we're putting the work groups together and saying, all right, how do we create the best practice? How do we use our learning management system to get people up to speed? What kind of standards are we going to have around it so that we can accelerate our progress in gaining a return on the investments we've already made that are important?
You have already done the foundational hard parts. You're about to have a lot of fun with this, I would think, because having the data to make better decisions, you actually have information coming out now you can act on.
Yeah, we stood up Epicor Data Analyzer, which is powered by Focus a year and a half or so ago. And you know, my declaration was we need a single source of truth. So everything that we can funnel through, which should ultimately be every bit of data that we can have, we're going to funnel through our data analytics engine. And we've got a myriad of dashboards. I saw that it was a very impressive dashboard on the week-to-week look from SPI. We've got a whole bunch of dashboards, and we still have a ways to go to funnel all data through this single source of truth, but that's what it has to be. I wouldn't want to be in this environment stumbling around in 6 different places trying to get basic reports on a status of our operation. And we've gotten much more sophisticated about forecasting. So that's really important in an environment like this, especially as it relates to how you engage with strategic suppliers, as was mentioned earlier. I really wholeheartedly support that notion.
Are you seeing any really appreciated or best practices from suppliers where they're innovating, or without naming names, any particularly stupid things you see them doing?
Well, how long is this call when so
Sorry.
yeah, wow, how much time you got? Well, yeah, we see. So I think some suppliers are standing out in how they're being proactive in their communication. They're being transparent. The stupidity is when suppliers are unwilling to share. You know,
exactly.
So it's like when they're not willing to be forthcoming and transparent, even if the answer is, well, I really don't know, and here's why this is all screwed up. You know, we had a great moment of transparency from our bank during this whole PPP program, and it's like it was supposed to be first come first serve. We were first in line at 5 something in the morning on the first day, and then nothing was happening. And I got a hold of a senior VP of the bank, and I said, what's your deal? Because we got people with high anxiety, their livelihoods, you know, they're concerned. They know that this could make a big difference for our business, for our customers and our community that we serve. And you're not telling us anything. And he came back, he goes, let me look into it. He escalated. He came back and he goes, well, we weren't doing it first in, first out. Somebody made a decision to do a batch process, and it didn't work. It was broken, and I fixed it, and you guys are in line where you should be. So I think that kind of, I always like operating that way anyway, but I think that kind of transparency and forthrightness will just create better partnerships going forward for the suppliers and customers that are willing to be open.
I think it's wonderful that you got, because that had to be embarrassing for that bank executive, and to hear that level of transparency from a bank, I would encourage you to keep that relationship because it's rare.
It is, and I think sometimes one's forthrightness and transparency and candor begets another party's forthrightness. So I think to have strong partnerships going forward, whether it's with customers, if you know what you're about, not trying to be everything to everybody, and you're willing to just put your cards on the table. I'm not naive about it, but when you got nothing to lose by having those conversations, I think it builds trust and it builds relationships. So the stupidity in suppliers are the ones that just can't get over themselves and drop their guard enough to really work shoulder to shoulder to solve problems, especially when it comes to solving customers' problems and needs.
Well, I've got to believe the invisible hand of Adam Smith. The ones that are transparent with you are going to grow and gain share, and the ones that don't, that's where it's going to come from.
They're going to be dead to us.
Yep.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
right.
So John, let's shift gears because this is about as timely as we can get, because you're big into aerospace, and
Right.
I know one of your major customers is Boeing right there in your markets in Washington. Tell us a little bit about what's going on. Was it last week where they started to ramp back up production?
Yeah, 2 Mondays ago, which in this environment is equivalent to 47 years, Boeing brought back in the Puget Sound 2,500 people to work on the 767 tanker for the military. And this last Monday, which is 23 and a half years ago, they brought back it took till Tuesday night, they brought back 27,000 people in 3 shifts to ramp up. Yeah, to ramp up their commercial production. Now, you know, the new plateau is going to, when they're up and going, is going to be lower than where they were before, because the airline industry, I told Tom in a visit earlier, 2 Saturdays ago, TSA processed 95,000 people through all airports in the US, and the typical day is 2.1 million. And that was a statistic that just hit me in the eye. I know airlines are down and everything, but that's pretty dramatic. That's not going to be that way forever. But so how long this goes on, it will determine what kind of shape of a recovery curve the aerospace industry has. Boeing's working to make sure their supply chains don't rot. I mean, they have to make sure they're viable. And so some of what's going on is just making sure supply chain keeps at a state of readiness to support Boeing when things recover, whether it's 2 quarters out or 7 quarters out.
In terms of social distancing on airlines, my partner was booking a seat on Alaska from Seattle for Thanksgiving back to Orlando. Alaska Airlines is only booking aisle and window seats. They have blocked all their middle seats for social distancing. So there's a limited capacity. I mean, right. I'm still reeling from, you know, all these changes everybody's thinking through.
So, the good news is on that it means they need more airplanes. And you know, one of my big worries throughout all this crisis is whether or not I'd be able to get my elite status tier next year with Alaska, but they rolled it forward. So I'm feeling a lot better now.
Yeah, America and everybody else is rolling it too. Same thing with Marriott.
Yeah. So John, 737 MAX programs, what have you heard about that? What's the status of that and going forward?
Well, I think Boeing last year they had a bad philosophy to antagonize and argue with regulators who held their lives in their hands when it comes to 737. It's kind of like Tom Gale can let you on this, be seen on this thing or not. So they did not handle that well. The CEO change, I think, was smart and the right idea. Boeing has been saying it's a midsummer thing. I've seen some information that might be a little bit further out, but we're not that far away from getting that thing going again. Now, what does that mean? They're getting orders canceled. They still have over 4,000 planes on backlog. They've got hundreds of planes on the ground. They were still building them at the rate of 42 a month from March to December, but they can't deliver any of them. So they'll have to retrofit those for whatever the adjustments are, but they'll deliver those. And so I don't know when they come back up if they'll get back to, you know, the same level of production, but there'll certainly be something going on. And I expect in the third quarter, we'll see that starting to kick in. And that'll be good news for Boeing and Boeing suppliers and for those of us that support.
Good news for everybody, John.
Yeah, right.
So what on the PPE side of your business, John, what are some of the things you're seeing there?
Well, I mean, we're seeing this, you know, sourcing's really interesting. And we did some really great sourcing when Boeing was shut down to help them get ready and prepared to ramp up. And they even said that they got going again in some measure because of the work we did helping them source all kinds of different things. So, you know, suddenly we have this COVID-19 line of business. It was not inconsequential. So that's kind of interesting. But it's definitely a challenge to source things. And there's a lot of misinformation There's a lot of Wild West behaviors going on. I've taken the stance that I really don't want to speculate on items that are 5 times the normal cost, because they'll regress to the mean. And it's, you have to factor in your return with the risk that you're taking to get that return. And I see some behaviors that aren't really appropriately factoring in risk. We also really aren't going to pay anybody up front when we don't even know who they are. And I see a lot of scary behaviors going on. I'm not a good enough gambler to figure that out. So we're going to stick to our fundamentals and our principles. I told our team as we started shooting the rapids on this, we've got a mission, vision, values, and fundamentals that we operate by, and we're just gonna double down on those to help our culture and help our customers and our suppliers get through it as best we can. And that means running around and suddenly turning into a lunatic gambler.
Well, there's a large crowd that you could join if you chose to do that, though, because I guess from a consultant point of view, we live on the stupidity in a lot of cases, and there are a lot of people going to hurt themselves.
It's pretty scary. There's gonna be some sad things, but we're also engaging in a lot more robust competitive analysis right now to see what opportunities are out there, and we'll be mindful of what kind of there's going to be a changing landscape. You guys have talked about some of the dynamics. But there'll be people that fall away that weren't prepared, that don't have the data, that don't have the value proposition. And so again, if folks can stay focused on who they are and what they are, you talked about Amazon. Amazon's there to efficiently provide a very specific function for a very specific but broad need. But there's lots of other needs that are specific. And you got to find your pathway to deliver on 1 or 2 of those, and then customers will reward you.
Yeah, let me just remind people to please ask questions using Q&A or the chat function here. And let me just take a twist on a question Mike asked earlier in terms of, with 2020 hindsight, is there anything that surprised you that I guess either positive or negative impacts today that you're seeing that you wish you'd known 2 months ago or 3 months ago?
Well, I wish I would have known how cool Zoom is.
We all wish we'd bought stock in it about 6 months ago.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'd say that on the positive side, it's not a surprise, but seeing our leadership team operating at the high level and the great teamwork and the commitment to our values has been it's not a surprise at all, but very rewarding for me personally, and the rest of our team and their good spirit. So I feel like the work we've done to develop and enhance and refine our culture, this is the kinds of times when that really pays off. And so that's been very rewarding. I've been dismayed and disgruntled with the political response. I think the broad brushed strokes for this kind of thing is unwise and unnecessary. And I think the logic has gotten convoluted to the point where there isn't any logic around it. So I think we should keep people safe. I think we should flatten the curve, but the disease isn't going to go away. And so the kinds of entrenchment we're seeing right now are concerning. In our state, we were well past the curve, and the governor is still insisting on a prohibition on elective procedures in hospitals until May.
That's where they make their money.
Well, yeah, and for our hospital system, it's not just that. It's that you've got people, so define elective. I mean, you got people who need cancer surgery before they can go proceed with their radiation and oncology, and they're not getting those treatments. So the level of anxiety and angst around that, the level of anxiety and angst of the economic situation, we're going to kill more people from stress than we are from the actual infection. So to me, that I know that's political commentary, but I usually don't do that in a broader forum. But I really think it's important that we get our political class to understand this idea of a rolling brownout and a localized whack-a-mole approach, rather than this huge broad brush situation we're seeing now that's costing us dearly in so many ways. And it's,
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
no, I'm just saying it's unnecessary.
Well, we've got several clients in Korea and we've obviously been talking to them through this whole thing. And I think the reason that they're going to go down 5 years from now, they'll go down as the country that had their act together the most. They did exactly what you're talking about because it was very, very granular. And there'll be places where these hotspots pop up again. They'll do a lockdown, but not even in a whole town, just in a part of a town. And then they do the testing and tracking. But I mean, they learned all that during the SARS epidemic. And I mean, hopefully I agree with you that I'm not proud of being an American in terms of how well we've handled this. But the one thing I still believe as an American is that we usually ignore things and screw it up, like giving the car business to the Japanese in the 70s. And now we make world-class cars. We'll ignore it, we'll screw it up. Then we're going to grossly overreact and we'll fix it.
I think that's right. Yeah, and that'll be a great time to be doing what we do in this space.
Yeah.
Whenever that comes to pass, I think it's not going to be next quarter.
No, it's not. Well, but one of the other things you said that I thought was interesting, because there's been all this discussion and emotion, and again, nobody knows. Is it a V recovery? Is it a U? How wide is a U? Is it an L? And the whole point, it's going to be an L, a V, and a U at individual local markets based on individual economies, and trying to use a blunt instrument to deal with this, it's just, we're creating a lot of collateral damage.
Well, that's exactly right. And so we're seeing, that's why I said rolling brownout.
Yep.
You know, it's a rolling, roving brownout situation. That's how I'm thinking of it. In all cases, anything we can do to find efficiency and create more variable cost model serves us well. So I would advise everybody in business to be thinking along those lines.
One update is that, and I follow as many smart people as I can, because I don't understand what's going on either. And there were a bunch of folks thinking it was going to be a V, and the smart guys are coming back exactly to where you are, that yes, we'll get done with this flatten the curve, but we're going to keep having these hot spots, and it's going to be with us for a long time. And we need to figure out what the new normal is and start thinking about how do we continue instead of just sitting around waiting for it to go back to January.
Yeah, it's not going back to January.
Yeah.
So Tom, it looks like we got a question. Sorry, I just saw something.
Looks like you got 4 chats and 1 question.
4 chats, okay. In terms of one of the audience folks, John, was wondering if there was a source of more data from stress than COVID-19, and I think that was a belief that you had, not necessarily citing a fact. Well, do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, well, so that is a belief I've had for a long time. I've read a few things about economic downturns and correlations to suicide and other types of stress-related health types of things like stroke and heart attack. And so there is empirical data around that. It's a little varied. It's not an exact science, but for sure, economic distress causes stress, which causes ill health. And
much like having teenagers.
It's like having teenagers, and it's like having bad teenagers, which is a worst possible thing. I never had bad teenagers, so I like that. But
denial is more than a river in Egypt, John.
Yes, sir. That's right.
So John, thanks so much for spending time. Really appreciate your insights, and best of luck to you and the team.
You too, Tom. Thanks,
Take
Mike.
care.
Take care, John. There was actually a question we haven't come in yet, which was about digital marketing and social media and how that's changing things. And anyway, so moving on. Hi, Chester.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
It's Friday, man. You're the last thing between me and a beer. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that out loud.
That's all right. A lot of people are thinking that.
Mike, I can send you on your way to your beer. Just say the word, right? Just with a click.
I put it in a Red Bull can.
Good, thanks. Thanks for semi-behaving. So our final guest today, Chester Collier, is a Senior Vice President with Walter Surface Technologies. Welcome, Walter. Great to see you again.
Thank
And
you, Tom. Real pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
absolutely. You have also been in several leadership positions with several associations. The two I'm most familiar with is an Industrial Supply Association and also with the Power Transmission Distributors Association. So just want to fill in a few of the blanks there, but would you please fill in the rest? Tell us a little bit about Walter and what you do.
Sure, my pleasure, Tom. So Walter is or Walter Surface Technologies, we like to call it. We're a global supplier. We have two sides to our business: industrial abrasives, so for cutting and grinding, for construction, metalworking, and then we have a chemical side to our business as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We've got about 300, a little over 300 people in the company, and we span the Americas. So, we have operations in the United States, in Canada, Mexico, and Brazil, about 8 distribution centers. Most importantly, out of that 300 or so people we have, about 140 of those are salespeople. And that's really important. They're all our own salespeople. We don't employ agents at Walter Surface Technologies. And what our people do is we think is a little bit unique. Part of the value proposition that we bring is that these 140 people, their main job is out showing and demonstrating products to the end users. We have a value proposition that we bring to the customer. We want to show him how by using something more safe, more effective, faster, it actually saves some money. And so we have to be at that end user kind of doing those demonstrations, showing that. We don't sell anything on a direct basis. We sell exclusively through distribution. So when we're out doing that, we're creating the demand, and then we're kind of funneling that demand and the orders back to our distributor partners. So we really think of it as a pull strategy through the market, not pushing product on distribution. A lot of our distributors, we've done some surveys in the past, and whether we think it's good or not, they say, well, we have to have Walter product because our customers are asking for it because the Walter guys are out there showing it to them. And so it's kind of a fun way to do business.
Yeah. So how are you and the team doing?
We're doing well. It's a very, very different type of an environment for us. One of the, we've met this challenge head on. The first and foremost thing when of course this happened was denial. It can't be happening. This is really something that we had not experienced before. I refer to it as the invisible enemy. You can't see it, touch it, or feel it, but it can certainly inflict a lot of pain on you. So the first thing we did was really to kind of put some safety measures in place for our people. That was number one. Make sure our folks were safe. And so we kind of did that, Tom, a couple of ways. Internally, we completely tore up the business plan as to how we did things. We had centrally located distribution centers. We had customer service in there. We had finance in there. We had ops in there. We very, very quickly took all of our customer service people. We transferred all the lines to the cell phone. We said, you guys work from home. Take your business there. Our finance people, the same thing. Anybody who could work from home, we mandated that they went home. And that was in all the countries that we do business with. People who couldn't, because we were deemed an essential service pretty early on because of the nature of our products and because of the types of customers that we sell to. So we had to stay open. We had to keep our warehouses running, but we just did some different types of shifts for the people. We put a lot of self-distancing measures in place, and I like to tell people, for the new people, that are in the business, those are easy things to adapt to. The older people that have been doing the same thing, we've got some people in our warehouse, they've been there 25, 30 years. That was a bit of a tough adaptation for them. But we said, look, we're doing it for your own safety, for your own benefit. One of the things we did do, which was a little bit, I think, unique, we as I mentioned, there's two aspects to our business. There's the abrasive side to our business, where we're out showing and demonstrating, and then there's the chemical side to our business. And the chemical side of our business, our management team, we meet once a week on a regular basis, and of course then we have one-on-ones throughout. But one of our managers came up and said, well, can we convert our plant and can we do something to help fight this COVID thing? And so I'm super, super proud of what we did. We turned this thing around pretty fast in about 2.5 days, changed some of the plant equipment we were producing, and we actually started producing hand sanitizers. And sanitizers and surface cleaners with a 70% alcohol content. And now that's not without its challenges, I can tell you, because we had not done that before. So I was listening to John and some of the speakers before, and they're talking about supplier relationships. And of course, we're a supplier, but now we're having to deal with suppliers we haven't dealt with before to try to get ethyl alcohol and different things like that. So
it's hard to find alcohol now.
It's, you know what, Mike, it's hard to find alcohol. We finally found a very steady source. But of course, one of the problems, and I think John alluded to this earlier, is you have some people that are maybe misrepresenting the product. You know, for alcohol to be effective, you have to have a minimum 60% alcohol content. You know, well, you don't know that until you get the product in your door. You know, you can have somebody say it's 60, 65, or 70, but until you get it, you don't know for certain.
Well,
So
and it's not just the raw materials. We had on somebody a couple of weeks ago who was saying that, you know, it's impossible to find triggers right now, and containers is an issue.
You're absolutely right, Tom. I mean, we thought our issue was getting the alcohol sourced, and we put a team on it. They were calling all around the Americas trying to find it. We finally secured a source, and we said, okay, now we've got this thing under control. And then lo and behold, you know, well, we can get the bottles, but we can't get the caps. Well, why can't we get, well, the cap supplier is a different supplier, and they ran out of caps. We can get bottles and caps, but we can't get sprayers. We can get 350 milliliter bottles, but not 500. We can get 500, but not 300. And you know, you
got to be light on your feet, man. You got to be just light on your feet.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
You know, when this all started, you know, we were communicating with our customers, you know, on a daily basis, and trying to keep them, you know, up to date as to what was happening. But I tell people now, you know, when I've called customers that maybe were upset they didn't get their order, or they got the wrong size container, and I've said, you know, folks, this doesn't change daily anymore. It changes hourly. You know, we were expecting 500 milliliter bottles to show up at our door one morning, and they didn't show up. We had the production team ready. The product was produced. The bottling line was ready, and we called the company, and they said, we had a sickness here. Plant is shut, and just like that, it's gone. So then you have to be pretty nimble and try to move as quickly as you can to do some other things. So it's been a learning experience for us, but it's been gratifying. You know, we have it running now. Things are going pretty good. We still can't get bottles. Okay, I can tell you that. We still can't get those, but you know, we have a lot of customers now buying in, you know, gallons and 5 gallons and 55-gallon drums and so on. But it's been a real challenge for the team. And the other thing that really was gratifying to find out, you know, our plant was set to, you know, run 8 hours a day, and typically, like most production facilities, you're not running full. You know, you're running at 70%. So we're running 5 hours a day. Well, now we're running 2 8-hour shifts a day, and really interesting that, you know, we've gone out to our people and said, does anybody want to work on the production shift? You know, I've gone in and spent some time on the production shift. Our CEO has gone in and spent time on the production. Finance people, everybody, because we kind of joke about it. You don't need skill to take bottles off a line and put them in a box, you know? So we've had a lot of people step up to really help get this product and get this out to our customers.
So what are you seeing in terms of your distributors that you work with? I mean, one of the things we're trying to help distributors in terms of what John was talking about earlier is, what do they need to be doing to be valued by a supplier? And what are the things that you're seeing that you appreciate from your distributors, or things that are a pain in your butt?
Well, you know, one of the things that when we started doing this, we went out to our distributor partners and said, look, this is what we've got. You know, here's the container sizes. And, you know, we had a lot of guys kind of came onto it very, very quickly and said, okay, yes, we'll do that. And then we had, I'm just going to close something here. I'm not sure if that was seeing. I think I disappeared here, Tom.
Nope,
No,
you're still with
there.
us.
You're still there, Chester.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Good. So, we had a lot of distributors that, hey, this is great. Let's do this. Let's bring stock in, for our customers. That went very, very well. We were super, super happy with that. The other thing that we're pretty impressed with the distributors that we really appreciate is they understand some of the challenges we're having right now with bottles. And again, just to go back to something that John talked about, we're trying to be exceptionally transparent with everybody. I had a call with somebody the other day, and he was upset because he couldn't get the container size. And once I explained the situation to him, he said, Chester, that's all I want. I just want an honest answer as to what's happened. Okay,
Right.
I'll change to this size here for you because you've got that now, and I'll get that, and I'll call my customers and I'll let them know about the change. So those are the
So
good
it's
things.
that transparency is really mattering to you as well. People telling the truth.
Absolutely. It's, we need to tell our customers, our distributor partners, the truth, and they need to tell us the truth as well. It's no good for us if they're saying, well, I have to have that size. The good ones are saying, okay, valid point, we can't get that. Hey, you know what? My customer will take this size here. Let me give them a call and let them make the switch. So that makes things a whole lot easier for us, a whole lot easier.
And it builds that relationship. It's just trust over multiple events.
Oh, absolutely.
So before you go to sleep at night, what are you thinking about? Because it sounds to me like you've already done a lot of repositioning. I mean, are you in a pretty stable situation now, or is it still you still feel like you're in a fight with Mike Tyson?
Well, on the chemical side, we're pretty stable now. We've made it well known to our customers. Hey, we cannot get 500 milliliter bottles. They're just not available. But we're building inventory now, which is something we were not able to do the first 3 weeks we were doing this. We were playing catch up all the time. But now we're starting to build inventory. So we think we've got that pretty much under control. We do have some issues, some border issues, and that's simply because different border people interpret things a little bit differently. The alcohol, 70% alcohol, so ours is all 70%. It doesn't need an FDA approval, so a lot of times, we'll ship it across through the border easily. Other times we'll get a surprise and it gets stopped and somebody will say, nope, it needs FDA approval, and it's tied up for 2 weeks until they get something from their supervisor saying, no, this is not something that you're eating. This is something to sanitize, and it'll go through. So those are some challenges. But, we think we've got that going pretty good. Mike, where the biggest challenge is, and kind of what keeps us really awake at night, is the other part of the business, the abrasive side to the business.
Abrasives, right.
Because our sales guys and gals, we have both. I mean, what they do every morning is get up and they go out and they see end users and they show product. And of course, you can't do that today. So, we've done a number of things to try to equip them. We were using Zoom prior to this. We gave all of our sales guys Zoom Pro licenses so that they could be on Zoom for extended periods of time. We've taken a lot of the sales tools that we've had in our line, and we've converted them to virtual sales tools. In other words, not that we've actually changed the tool itself, but we've come back to our sales guys and said, hey, this is a way to do this virtually. You don't have to be in front of the customer. We have videos on every product that we sell. We have videos on all the different programs that we have. Say, sometimes you can just send a video to the customer and get them on the phone. And it's not that the video will do the sales job, but if the salesperson is on the phone with that customer, if he's still working, he can walk him through the video and say, hey, this is how that machine works. This is how that abrasive works. So it's a retraining process that we're doing with our salespeople, and but that's a challenge.
How are the customers accepting it?
Exceptionally well. Because the customers are telling us, a lot of them are saying, hey, we're not allowed to have visitors here, but we still have to get our job done. The ones that are working, we still have to do stuff. So they're saying, this is fantastic. Send me the video. you know, and then call me on the phone. I'll tell you when I'm in front of my computer, then you walk me through it. And you know, then that way they can ask questions. They can ask us to stop the video, you know, so we'll stop it. We'll talk a little bit more about it. The customers are really accepting it very, very well, because, you know, their safety is paramount as much as our safety is paramount. Now, we will go and see the customer. I talked to one of our reps this morning, and a lady, and she said, no, Chester, I got a call to go into this place. I checked, said, you sure you want me? I said, yes, we're absolutely certain. We need to see this because we know how it can work. We need to see if it'll work in our application. So she said, great, I'll come. I've been self-isolating for 3 weeks. And they said, no problem. We're going to give you a hazmat suit. We're going to take your temperature, and we're going to give you all the PPE stuff when you come in. And she did. She went in, did the demo. The guy said, perfect, does exactly what we want. Okay, we're going to buy the unit. Now, she's gone back home, and she'll self-isolate again for another couple of weeks. Yeah. You know, but so we're finding ways to adapt.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the things, just to share, that we do a lot of work in construction, and what the Caterpillar dealers are doing, which would be their distributors, they'll send out a low-paid tech in the field to look at a bulldozer they're using Apple FaceTime, and the experienced guy back in the shop tells them to open up the cover, point the iPad at it, and it tells them to do things, and so they can actually apply the intelligence. And it sounds like that tool, you guys are right up in the forefront of all that. That's great.
Yeah, we're fortunate. We had a lot of this stuff already. You know, we were big believers in having videos, training videos and stuff like that. But the other thing, you know, that we found, and almost found it by accident, but as we started talking to our distributors out there, because, you know, again, we've got both sides of the business. You know, we've got our guys seeing the end users, but we've also got them talking to distribution. And distributor salespeople are just like us. They're isolated. They're home. And, you know, I've told our own sales team, you know, if you're in sales, you're a little bit of an extrovert. You like meeting people. You're gregarious. You're outgoing. This is killing salespeople, being at home, isolated. So what we've done is we've reached out to our distributors, and we've said, hey, listen, we can do training for your sales team. They're all sitting at home. Let's do a webinar, or let's do a Zoom meeting. We'll do the same type of thing for your salespeople. We've had one distributor that comes to mind right away. We've trained 136 of their salespeople 4 times now since this has happened. And they've said, Chester, this is exactly what our people need. You know, we don't want to let salespeople go. We know that this thing will end soon, hopefully sooner than later. And when it does end, we know that we're going to need our salespeople, but we also need them to stay busy. We need them to stay active. So we were doing this type of stuff, and we're getting wonderful, wonderful support from our distributor partners. And from that one, now we've gone and we're approaching everybody and saying, hey, do you guys want to do this training? And we've had nobody say no. Everyone is saying, this is absolutely fantastic. Because we all know when business is running normal, to try to get 136 sales guys to sit down for a webinar.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Absolutely not.
Well, and even if they did, they're still going to be on Amazon and Facebook and everything else while they're doing it. So
exactly.
I mean, that's a big win, Chester. That's a huge win.
Yeah, we're pretty happy with that. We're pretty happy with that. You know, and we're doing that in all the countries. You know, my Brazilian team, you know, they just trained an end user, and it was over 100 guys at the end user. And we couldn't go and see. They had a number of sites, and we talked to them. We said, hey, do you guys want to have safety training? Well, absolutely, we want to have safety training. So we did safety training, you know, for this multiple site and user. So we're doing this in all the countries where we operate.
Yeah,
that's cool. Obviously
just
in Portuguese.
Yeah, my Portuguese is not good, but my team is good. So.
So we have a few minutes left, Chester, with you, and just a reminder to use either the chat or Q&A function here to ask questions. And I just want to briefly come back, and Chester, I know you won't mind, but Mike earlier had mentioned around some of the data privacy issues and confidentiality. And PTDA, Mike was referring to PTDA's cost of goods sold guidelines regarding confidentiality, and we'll send some more information out about that in terms of sourcing that, because it's a great resource as well. So I knew you would appreciate that if we did a little public service announcement for that as well, Chester.
Absolutely. And Tom, as you know, full disclosure, I'm vice chair on the Manufacturers Council.
Right.
And so absolutely, you can pump that as much as you like.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, the point is it's, there's an old line, Thomas Jefferson said, an armed society is a polite society. And what that cost of goods sold, that's a new version of it. It actually marks out the obligation of each party to the other, which makes it much easier to trust people. And the more information you get, the more competitive advantage you get. So
absolutely. And you know, one of the things, Tom, and I know you're a big fan of this. You don't need to tell anybody that, but data, we're using data very differently in this environment. We've been proactive. We've been collecting a lot of data, you know, on our end user customers, getting point of sale from our distributors as well. And we've got some great channel marketing manager that has really taken this under her wing to say, hey, I'm going to communicate with our end user community on a weekly basis, you know, and just, you know, stuff, you know, whether it's the sanitizer product that we want to make them aware we have, whether it's other products, other programs that we have, making sure that they know that if they want to see a product, that we can do the video for them. We can send them a video link, you know, so a really robust communication schedule going out to the end user community as well, making them aware that these are the things we can do to help you out.
is that a social media thing?
We do social media, so, you know, obviously Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but we're also just doing a lot of direct mail because we've collected a lot of data really in about the last year and a half, you know, on a customer, building profiles and really sending them dedicated information.
That's cool. Well, and if you got the database to keep all the information, all of a sudden it creates intellectual capital.
Absolutely.
And Kim, thank you. I just shared the link to the PTDA cost of goods sold guidelines.
Oh, super.
First to all the attendees that's here. We'll also include the link as well. So thanks for that, Ann, and for that as well, Chester. So with that, I think we're at the end of our time, Chester. As always, time went way too fast, but
yes.
Very good to visit with you, and thanks so much. Appreciate it, and best to you and your team.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it, guys. Take
Hey,
care,
final thing, Chester.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Oh.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Happy birthday, Chester. And because we don't want to destroy this program, I won't sing happy birthday.
Well, we could get 500 people to sing happy birthday to him.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Tom,
Take care, man.
Take care.
Stay safe. All right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Tom, there was one question that came in. I'd like to, if I can do 30 seconds on it.
Please.
What industries do you see particularly hard hit in this disruption, and what do you see as the rate of recovery across industries, and which industries will come back more quickly than others?
Well, you've got the answer to that, Mike.
Well, I have a process that people can use, which is what we're doing. I mean, some industries, like we got a floral distributor that their revenue's down 80%. I mean, they've got totally destroyed supply chains. But what we're telling distributors is take your top 20 customers, and it's not just the industry they're in, who are they selling to? It's called C2, your customer's customer. And so what ends up happening, if I can be dealing with somebody that's an industrial plant and they're manufacturing things, and I'm selling abrasives, but they manufacture products that are used on cruise ships, by definition, things are going to be underwater, no pun intended, for a long time. So if you just, at a very quick level, it doesn't take a lot of work because everybody pretty much knows, or your sales guy should know. But if you take your top 20 customers and say, who are their top couple customers and what industries are they selling in? And then you kind of go back and just Google that industry and COVID-19, just put a couple of those phrases together in Google. There's a ton of stuff. It's tedious, but at least it gives you a sense, is it a grape or a watermelon?
But what it is, Mike, it's an additional layer of segmentation that Kim had up on that dashboard.
Yep.
Across both size of customer, segmentation of customer, but then additionally going deeper and going to that customer and really looking at the specific impacts of that as well.
I'm not sure how happy she is that you shared all that, but that was one of the nice things that they're doing.
It was very generous, but I know it was tremendously helpful for a lot of people. There's a lot of comments here from attendees about it as well.
Yeah.
So final 30 seconds, Mike, key takeaway from today?
I'm enjoying the fact that the sort of the panic and, oh my God, the world's ending and all this sort of knee-jerk reaction stuff. The smart guys are pretty much through it, and they're starting to talk like Kim and John and Chester, and they're starting to think about what's going to happen and all this opportunity. And it's much more fun to play offense and defense. And there's going to be, I am firmly convinced that most people, and most of our distributors are lifestyle businesses, they're just going to pull the blanket up, cut costs, and wait for this to go away so it goes back to normal. And every one of those companies that make that decision is an opportunity to capture customers. So I think we're going to see in another couple of months a whole lot of people getting very aggressive in acquisitions, and it's going to be, I think, from a consulting point of view, the industries, these various distribution channels are going to end up stronger. The strong will get stronger. We'll clean it out a little bit, and we'll go forward to deal with the next crisis.
Absolutely. It's a different version of the types of waves that happened in the previous consolidations. But you're absolutely right. With those who are pulling their heads up, the covers up over their heads, they're going to be the acquisition targets, because the people who are operating now and thinking forward are going to be there. And that was my key thought today. It was really, as we've done this every week for the past month, every week it's been shifting from that kind of immediate reaction to be much more strategic. And my mantra this last week, in terms of a lot of the conversations, it's about stay strategic. And every one of the leaders I'm talking with, it's absolutely about that. It's great to see, as you say, it's a lot more. I mean, it's people are starting to shift much more quickly now. So, and we'll have another interesting discussion next week. So with that, Mike, thanks. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.
And I'll go get that cocktail. Take care, Tom.
You
Bye-bye.
bet. Take
Thanks
care.
for watching, everybody.
Thank you.